BearSkills.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in this video we're going to cover some tips for you guys. Now I know that there are some of these you guys may already know, but the goal of this video is to hopefully teach you guys at least one new thing that will help you guys out in your matches. So without further ado, let's jump into some tips here. So tip number one, Blast is super effective for item denial. Now what I'm talking about here is when you're playing Spoils of War, I'm sure you guys are quite familiar with the different items that spawn on the map. You have the Jewel, you have the Key, and you have the Vault Breacher. Now these items, when picked up, if you do take enough damage, you will drop these. Now normally you'd use your flame breath or your fireballs in order to deal this damage to make the enemy drop the item. You can actually use Blast. Blast is super effective. Now the reason for this is because it has a large area of effect, and if you get a well-timed blast off on an enemy, it will do enough damage on its own to actually make an enemy drop their item. So if you see an enemy and they're carrying an item, and you have Blast on either the Windguard or the Phantom, those are the two classes that Blast is available on. You can use Blast to help deny that enemy, either getting away with that item or maybe taking that item to your base in the case of the Vault Breacher. Now, there should be some clips in the background right now showcasing that off. Essentially, you just want to time it. You want to get the blast as close to the enemy as possible, and then make sure to detonate it with a second click of the ability button. And as long as it is close enough, it should definitely do enough damage to not only knock the enemy out of the way and possibly disorienting them, depending on their health, maybe even outright killing them, and it will make them drop their item. So that's tip number one. Very effective if you play a lot of Spoils of War. Something to keep in mind, especially if you're playing Windguard or Phantom. If you don't play those classes, keep in mind that if you're going against enemies of those classes, they can do the same thing to you. Now moving into tip number two here, the Drake Piercer is actually a very flexible item on the map. Now this spawns on Carnage, and essentially what the Drake Piercer is it's a spear. Once you get it, you can equip it, and you will be able to target an enemy with it and one-shot them. If you were able to target an enemy, much in the same way you would target an enemy with your fireballs, the Drake Piercer is nearly a guaranteed hit. But it's not just that, there's a lot of flexibility to it. So most people have a button to switch weapons in the game. Mine currently is binded to the A key. So my A key will either flip between using fireballs or the Drake Piercer when I do have the Drake Piercer in my inventory. You guys should see some gameplay in the background right now showing that off. And there are some different things to mention. For one, you don't have to have Drake Piercer out in your hand when you have it in your inventory. When you do have it in your hand and you are ready to throw it, it will change your camera angle, which can make it a lot harder to maneuver. So I would highly recommend that you unequip it before you plan on using it. That way you can more easily line up a shot and pick out a target you want. It is also worth mentioning the Drake Piercer does not have a time limit. If you pick it up, as long as you do not die, you will hold it for as long as you are alive, or the round ends. So, with that in mind, you do have a little bit of time to pick out a really good target, especially in Carnage. You can try to hopefully pick out somebody with a lot of bounty tokens and get a lot of value for your team. Now keep in mind the enemy team will see a Drake Piercer symbol next to your name, indicating that you do hold the Drake Piercer. So they will probably focus on you to make sure you don't actually get any value out of that. But I also want to mention that all of your abilities are available to use with the Drake Piercer. You can have it in your hand and you can activate your abilities, or you can unequip it with your weapon switching key, and you can use your abilities there as well. It is also a good point that if you have it in your hand and you use Flame Breath of your dragon, it will actually unequip the Drake Piercer, so you will have to re-equip it in order to actually throw it. So you guys probably know this one. This is probably the most basic tip in the video, but if you don't know about it, it can be really important. I see a lot of people struggle to use the Drake Piercer, myself included, but knowing that you can unequip it and re-equip it at any point in time really helps, because that camera angle is really hard to maneuver with, especially when trying to pick out a target on these large maps when there's a lot of enemies to look through. Now, moving into tip number three, this is also going to be a tip that involves Spoils of War. So shields will affect your player gold drop. Now, what I mean by this is when you have gold in your inventory, if you take damage, you will slowly drop your gold that you have in your inventory. Upon death, you will drop all gold in your inventory. Now, if you have a shield, any damage done to your shield will not make you drop gold. So, that only applies to damage done to your health that will make you drop gold. So, in other words, shields are a really, really high priority if you're trying to run a lot of gold. Make sure you always have shields up. This also applies to the shield granted from Salvation Surge. So if you have any Windguards on your team, or you are a Windguard yourself, make sure you're getting that extra shield because that will help you out. If you have enemies on you, you will not drop as much gold due to your shields kind of blocking that damage, and therefore preventing you from dropping gold until those shields are depleted. That's tip number 3. Moving into tip number 4, Salvation Surge. The healing of Salvation Surge is affected by the shield. Now, what I mean by this is when you use Salvation Surge, there should be a clip in the background here showing it off. It will grant you some extra shields, 50 to be exact, when using the ability on its normal base level. Now, Salvation Surge will also apply a heal over time on both you and the teammate you boosted with Salvation Surge. But if either you or your teammate loses that shield granted by Salvation Surge, that will immediately cancel the healing process, even if there is still time left on the duration of Salvation Surge. So if you boost to a teammate and they are low on health, and they immediately lose that shield, they will gain very little in terms of healing, and that goes for you as well. So if you can, try to maintain those shields so you can get the most value out of that heal over time. Now moving into tip number 5, make sure you guys are canceling your Salvation Surge early in certain situations in order to have super increased mobility on the Windguard. It's very important. A lot of people can get frustrated. I can too. Trying to use Salvation Surge, and sometimes it can be hard to actually get to your teammate before it cancels, and then gives you that small few second cooldown. You can actually use that to your advantage. There should be some clips in the background showing this off as well. If you are boosting to a teammate that is really far across the map, you will get an insane speed boost while you're moving towards them, and right before you get to them, or whenever you feel like stopping or would rather cut off into a different direction, all you need to do is simply brake and turn sharply left, right, or down, or up, depending on where your teammate is. And as long as you do this before you give the boost to your teammate, you will only have that short duration cooldown of a few seconds, meaning you'll have your ability up again if you do need to boost a teammate and give them some healing or shields. Or if you want to move across the map again or to another teammate, you will also have that up very quickly. So make sure that you are using the ability to cancel your Salvation Surge early to your benefit to increase your mobility with Windguard. If you're using this properly, Windguard can have insane mobility. You can get across the map in just a couple seconds, way faster than any other class can. So mastering this is a really, really key component to playing Windguard well. Now, moving into tip number 6 here, damage to shields doesn't apply Rage Buildup. So if you guys have any shields and you take damage, that will not apply any rage. So essentially, when you take damage, your ability will have a meter right above it in orange that will start to fill up. Once that is full, your ability will become raged, and that will change the properties of it. My class guide videos, I cover what changes with the rage, but this tip is that if you have shields on your health bar, this is either regular shields found around the map, or shields granted by Salvation Surge. If you take damage with a shield on, it will not apply any rage buildup. It only applies buildup for your rage if you take damage to your health. And there's a little bit more to cover in that. It's actually quite complicated. When you take damage to your health, extra damage will not apply any extra rage. So what I mean by this is, for example, if you have 10 HP and you fly through a Phantom's Mine, it will only apply the rage for that 10 HP. It will not apply any extra rage for the extra damage dealt to you. Meaning the fastest way to gain rage would be to take large amounts of damage, but don't have it do more than what your health bar has, or that damage will be wasted. So really important, if you want to build up your rage quickly, you may want to consider using less shields, a bit of a risk-reward playstyle. You might be able to have your rage more times during a match, but you are going to have less ability to take damage. So kind of a risk-rewards playstyle, like I said, up to personal preference. Just something to keep in mind during your matches. Now moving into tip number 7, Windguard Berserk doesn't buff your Flame Breath. A regular Berserk does. So the Berserker Wraith that spawns on the Carnage maps that you can go around and kill will not only buff your Fireball cooldown, your Fireball damage, and your Flame Breath damage. Those are the 3 things that the Berserker buff will increase, as well as your health. Now, the Windguard Berserk buff does the same things. It doesn't give you the extra Berserker health. You do get a little bit of increased shields and a little bit increased healing than normally from a regular Salvation Surge, but it doesn't grant you that huge health buff, and it doesn't apply any damage buff to your Flame Breath. It only affects your Fireballs. I run into a lot of problems where I get berserked by a teammate, and I immediately am like, oh, this is the Berserk buff, so my Flame Breath is buffed. Actually, it's not. So you guys want to prioritize using your Fireballs if you are buffed from the Windguard Berserk buff, rather than the regular Berserk buff. So one last thing to keep in mind. That is going to do it for this video, guys. That is all the tips for this video. Hopefully, you guys did learn something new, and if you guys did, make sure to give the video a like, as it does help the channel a ton. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed. As I've said before, we are doing a giveaway at 1,500 subscribers. We are almost there. We're just past 1,300. So if you guys want to be part of that giveaway, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video.